So what's up everyone, this is Darren Rosios, and today I'm going to be showing you guys and disassembling my VFC Avalon SABER CQB with a gate-tightened MOSFET inside, and this is a DSG Precock custom build. I'm doing these videos mostly to show you guys the internals, just to show you guys that that there is some thought process behind this stuff. Hopefully I'll format this video better than I did with my Amoeba video, but for now, this is how it fires. So there is a bit of trigger work done. This is a speed trigger, and I added solder at the back to shorten the over travel. So that's as far back as it can go, right? And then this is full auto. So let's quickly test it for you. So I'm going to be using 0.2 gram tracer BBs. I'm only using tracer BBs is because these are the only 0.2 grams I have. I don't have any other 0.2 gram BBs. And just to show you guys that these are tracer BBs. Now you can see them glowing. So let me spin the camera around. Oops. Oops. Quickly. Oops. Focus. So this is my outdoor DSG, so it's going to be shooting a little powerful, a little bit. Oh, sorry, I am breaking BBs. Sorry about that. Oh, because I used to have another leveler for my chronograph. I don't have it anymore. But basically, it's around 400 FPS. So let me just clean this crap off the table because it's a little messy. And then we can start disassembling the rifle. And the rate of fire, I'll just screenshot the rate of fire from my gate control station. So let me clear the rifle. Because these BBs. As a side note, in case of you guys ask, can I also test the gun with 0.36 gram BB? It's still shooting about the same. It's still shooting about 1.5, 1.6 joules with 0.36 gram BBs. And the reason why is because for a dual sector gear, you basically don't get any joule creeping because the nature of a DSG, it doesn't really do that unless if you purposely do some work to do that. I would use a 19th DSG for that personally, but you know, whatever you guys prefer. So first, let's take out the battery. So this is my 11.1 LiPo. I use this for my Amoeba as well. This is an 11.1 25C, 1800 milliamp hour battery. There's tape around it, is because that's how I label my batteries. And the stock I'm using, this is a EPS stock from PTS. It's one of my favorite stocks, is because I can actually fit my 11.1 LiPo in here, which is perfect. And now you pop the upper receiver off. I have to pull my receiver apart a little bit more carefully, is because my hop-up chamber is made out of plastic. So this is my hop-up chamber. So inside, so this is the original stock VFC rotary style hop-up chamber with a maple leaf 70-degree hop-up rubber, maple leaf tensioner, and a PDI barrel. So to show you guys that this is a maple leaf tensioner and all that, I'm just gonna try to show it to you guys on camera. You can already see the color of the hop-up rubber. There we go. You can tell there's a little bit of hop applied to already. This appears to be enough hop for me. The tensioner is quite secure and is applying quite a lot of tension. You can see that there's a bit of hop there. And that's basically all there is to this hop-up setup. The hop-up setup is actually not all that important. And the reason why is because when you're building your DSG, depending on which gun you build, your hop-up will probably not be the same as mine, because this doesn't really matter all that much. What's more important is optimizing your build for whatever that you intend to use it for. So in my case, because my build, the goal of this particular build, by the way, the goal of this was to have this be used for indoors and outdoors. So basically 1.2 joules or 1 joule. And also outdoors, I'll put a stronger spring at 1.5 joules. And the reason why I don't mind setting the gun up like this is because this VFC gearbox, it has the quick change spring. So therefore, having this gun set up for both indoors and outdoors is sort of like, why not? I might as well, right? And the second goal of this build is trigger response, of course, which is the reason why I shortened the trigger. Why I'm doing a DSG precock in this is because the trigger response is significantly better. I basically don't use this gun for full auto, even though it can go full auto. So that's basically it for the upper. And now let's start disassembling the rest of the gun. So these are the few tools that I have left. Sorry, I can't see my buffer tube screw. The tape is here, by the way, is to reduce the stock wobble. As a side note, for my gate tighten MOSFET, I did modify the leaf spring over here on my T plug, and I made it more bendy because it didn't provide a lot of tension with my Dean's plug on my battery. It didn't provide a lot of tension with this. This is the XT Dean's. It might be a China copy, I'm not entirely sure. I don't really care. I will switch the camera angle later also. So this is the bolt catch and everything. And then I'm going to take off the selector. So that's one side. That's the other side of the selector. Now one side of the left side of the selector, there's a little ball bearing over here. And this ball bearing sits on this side of the gearbox. Now, you will notice that on my gearbox, I drilled out the hole a little bit bigger. The reason why is because the ball bearing, it wasn't sitting very well, so it wasn't making the selector very clicky. So I decided to make these areas a little bit bigger for the ball bearing to sit more securely, so that my selector is more clicky. That's the reason why it looks a little bit odd. Now we can move on to the rest of the disassembly. So I'm just taking out the mag catch. The mag catch is like the old school ones. You have to take it apart like this. I do caution you to be gentle, is because the mag catch is made of aluminum. I'm worried about stripping the threads. I am considering replacing this, is because I don't like the Crusader magazine release. The VFC Avalon came with that, by the way. And now take off your motor plate. I will explain why there are 4 holes here. Your VFC Avalon will not come with holes on the grip. So when you first buy your VFC Avalon, you will notice that on your motor plate you will have die cast marks in these areas that I drilled. And those die cast marks means that you can drill through the plate very easily for you to vent the heat. That's the reason why this is here. You can actually see exactly where I drilled through them. Right. So this is nothing particularly special. You can actually just swap your motor grip to something else that has a vent. I'm just not bothered, so I just drilled some holes. Nothing special. And this is my SHS motor, which I've been using for quite some time now. There's actually a lot of carbon on it. It's really dirty, but for now it still works, so that's what I'm going to continue using. I do clean off the carbon off my motor every now and then. Every 4 or 5 months, if I've been using it continuously, I will take it apart and clean it. So far, I've only taken this apart once to clean it. Otherwise, though, I try not to touch it. Sorry about that, guys. I accidentally knocked the camera down. I'm using a new tripod. It's because my old tripod broke. So, all I did earlier was take out my motor and my motor grip. I'm just going to continue taking out my grip screws. So with my motor grip, it's very, very dirty. It's full of carbon, but it's okay. I'm just gonna leave my gun dirty because it's an AEG. I really don't want to like do too much to it. Just took out the body pin. Sorry, the gearbox pin. I really like the Amoeba better because all the pins are like come out so easily. But I suppose that's there's a good and bad thing to each of these. So this is my lower receiver from my Avalon, which I take very good care of. I try not to be too rough with it. These are your ambi selector cogs, which is quite interesting. I've actually never owned an ambi M4 before until recently, so I didn't know they just had like a thingy on the side for the ambi controls. So up to this point in the video, I will move the camera a little bit closer to the gearbox because it's easier for you guys to see from this angle is probably better because my overhead camera is broken and my overhead tripod is broken. So just take off all your screws. Oh, sorry. I should be taking off my quick change spring first. Should be this. So this right here for my gun that's shooting 400 FPS right now, this is an M150 spring. It is the heaviest spring that I've ever used. Well, actually, that's not entirely true. I have used an M170 spring before, but I decided that I didn't want to use it. It's because I didn't really trust the M170. I'm so sorry if the camera keeps falling. It's because this is the best tripod I have for now. Oops. So later on, I might actually hold the camera in my hand, because it's easier for me to show you guys all the parts that I want to talk about. Now, after I'm done, just like before, I like to give my gears a quick poke. And then the gearbox shell just comes out really easily, with little to no effort. So let me first take off my Titan, and then I'll start showing you guys the gearbox internals. And I'll also take out my bevel gear because it's just easier to see everything in my gearbox. And now we can start looking at all the parts in details. So the gearbox is actually really nothing special. There isn't anything here that's super expensive or super out of the way weird. So this right here is a Gate Titan version 2. So this is basically what allows my trigger to feel very sensitive and all that stuff. This actually MOSFET is probably my favorite MOSFET because it basically does everything really well. The optical sensors for the sector gear, for the trigger, and also for the selector plate, they work absolutely fantastic. The gate control station software is really good, is because you can set it to precock. In fact, early on in this assembly, I forgot to release my gun from precock, so it's actually still precocked at the moment. Right? That's the reason why the piston's like that. And you can even see the position of the precock is actually really nice. Right? So this is actually a great way for you guys to see all the to see how nice the precocking is working with this particular Gate Titan MOSFET. I'm not entirely sure if the BTC Spectre does that too. I'm pretty sure it does, is because the BTC Spectre has been out for a very long time. A lot of people like it. They also use it for precocking builds and DSG builds. So with the Gate Titan or BTC, you can't really go wrong with either. I personally prefer the Gate Titan though, it's because it just works. It is so straightforward. It's literally a plug and play for me, and I absolutely love it. Now, this is where I show you where the trigger work is done. So can you see at the back over here? I'm actually going to take the trigger out. So forgive me because I'm one-handing the camera. I'll actually set this down right now so I can quickly show you guys. So right over here, you can see that my speed trigger has a set screw at the back over here. This is what allows me to adjust the take-up of my trigger. You don't have to buy this. You can actually add a pad at the back over here. I just chose to do it this way because I wanted a flat trigger. It's because flat triggers just feel better for me. And as you can see over here at the back over here, that is solder. This is just solder with a little bit of super glue just to keep it in place, and this stops the over travel. Now, another way that you can stop the over travel is add a bit of solder to the back over here. However, in my experience, I find that adding solder to the gearbox is a way better method. So I just decided to do that just to stop the trigger from going too far back. A lot of people do this for hair triggers, so this is actually nothing particularly special. Now, for the gears, this is a SHS DSG gear. I'll actually remove my piston and everything so you guys can see a little bit better. This is an SHS DSG gear, and this is a SHS 18-to-1 gear set. Nothing particularly special. As a side note, in case of you guys ask why are there gearbox scratches, in the past, these bearings, these are not VFC bearings. My old VFC bearings, they exploded and they broke. So after they broke, what happened was that my spur gear was spinning on a broken bearing. So after it spun, it scratched my gearbox. It also scratched a little bit of the top side of the spur gear. I don't know if you guys can see that. So I quickly found that out really early on. That's the reason why they're still okay. Now I've put them on a new set of bearings. These are modified ceramic bearings. I'm not entirely sure if they're the best bearings in the world, but I decided to use them just because this is a long-term gun anyways, so I don't mind having it there. There's only really one thing worth noting about these gears. Because you're using a gate tighten, you can't have the sector gear shimmed too high. And the reason why is because for the gate tighten, there's a top side over here. And the top side has a sensor over here. If you shim your sector gear way too high, which you shouldn't be doing that anyways, you might hit the sensor over here. So just keep that in mind. It's very important that you do not hit it. Because I'm pretty sure Gate will try to help you out, but you know, just don't damage your MOSFET. It's because these MOSFETs are very expensive. If I recall correctly, this is about if you buy the one that's not advanced, the basic version is $90 US. The advanced version, I think it's 130 or 150 US. I can't really remember. But these MOSFETs, they're not exactly cheap, so just take good care of them. Next up for the gearbox. So for the gearbox, all I did was that I radiused the area for the cylinder just to prevent it from breaking. Do remember that this is just a VFC. You still have to take good care of the gearbox. These things are not like tanks, so you still have to take good care of them. So that's the reason why I radiused the gearbox. I also did something somewhat unique. Now, when I shimmed all my gears, I realized that my sector gear was hitting this portion of my gearbox. Can you see how this area has been grinded off? Oh, sorry, there's a shim over here. Let me put that shim away first. But anyways, can you see that there's an area over here that I grinded off? The reason why I grinded that off is because the top side of the sector gear, it was scraping this area of my gearbox. So now I did suspect that it was perhaps because my sector gear was shimmed a bit too high. I did suspect that. However, I basically tried to remove shims off my sector gear, and it was still partially touching. I could see some very small scratch marks. That's the reason why for my VFC gearbox, I decided to grind away this area to prevent that area from touching, to prevent the sector gear from scraping against this area of my gearbox. That's the reason why that area is modified. Now on with the air cylinder parts. So this right here, this is my SHS piston. This is a piston that I use very often for a lot of builds. I grinded off the teeth at the front over here to reduce the weight. I also drilled 4 holes on the top to reduce the weight of the piston. The reason why you do this for a DSG is because if the piston moves faster, you gain a bit of FPS. You don't gain a whole lot, but every bit helps. It's because since this is a DSG, your piston will only get pulled back halfway. And therefore, every bit of FPS that you can save, you should try to save it. So that's the reason why I did that. And just like my Amoeba, the steel rack, this has been super glued onto the piston. So it is as secure as it can be. For this particular piston, I did add one washer, and this is a Systema damper piston head. This is a Systema cylinder, and this is a Systema damper cylinder head. You can see that it has a funny shape, a tear shape area at the bottom over here. Now, these Systema cylinder heads, they are somewhat fragile, so for now I'm still using it. They still appear to be holding up very well in terms of the air seal. However, in the past, what happened was that this area, this thing, it can snap off the base. So for now, I've been taking very good care of this one. So far nothing has happened, but just to let you guys know that this thing, this can break. I shouldn't have dropped it like that, but that was my bad. And all the air seal here has been reworked already. I've taken the O-ring out of my nozzle, I've taken the O-rings off the cylinder, as well as the O-ring on my piston head, and I flared all of them. So my air seal is pretty much as good as it can be. As you guys can obviously tell, it shoots 400 FPS, so it's already working. It's not like the best in the world, but it is okay. This nozzle, this is a Prometheus nozzle that I have lying around. You don't have to use this. The only reason why I'm using this is because the Systema nozzle that came with it, I bought the Systema kit that cost 250 Hong Kong dollars, which was on sale. The reason why it was on sale is because it has been sitting around for years, and the nozzle O-ring, it rotted away. So and I couldn't pull the O-ring out for some reason, so I decided to pick up a Prometheus nozzle for it. That's the reason why I'm using a Prometheus nozzle in this case. The air seal parts in my Amoeba, in this particular build, you don't have to use it. You can use whatever you want. Just make sure that your air seal is good. Is because if you're trying to build a 400 FPS DSG build, you have to make sure that your air seal is as good as it can be. I'm not just simply saying by like putting your cylinder on top of this and seeing if the air seal is good. I'm not saying that that's not the only thing that you should do. You should also make sure that these seals do not blow out when you're using a strong spring. This is very important. It's because the pressure that you apply with your hands is not the same as the pressure applied from your spring. So it's very important that you guys understand that. And for the spring guide, this is the VFC Avalon ball bearing quick change spring guide. I haven't changed anything here. Make sure you lube the bearings though, because it's a little bit dry when I first got it. In fact, when I first opened my VFC, it basically had little to no lube, so that was a bit strange. And moving forward here, we have the tappet plate and the tappet plate spring. The tappet plate spring, just like before, you have to make sure that you increase the tappet plate strength, the strength of the spring. And what I basically did was that I took a pair of pliers and I bent out 2 coils. You can tell the area where it's bent. And this basically makes the tappet plate spring stronger. As a side note, I broke my original VFC one, so this is a element tappet plate spring that I modified. And this right here, this is the SHS tappet plate that comes with the SHS dual sector gear. You have to modify your tappet plate wing. Now in this case, the number that you modify here depends on how fast your build is. Now because this is a balanced DSG build, because this is only using 18:1 gears, and remember how I mentioned earlier that this is meant to be used indoors and outdoors, that means that I might be using a softer spring or a heavier spring sometimes. So therefore for this particular build, the amount of length that you leave over here, this time it is 11.1 millimeters. How much you trim will depend on your situation. So how do you identify it? If you trim too much, your gun will not feed. If you trim too little, you will lose power. So I just trimmed it enough, and now the gun is shooting 400 FPS, so that's really all I need. As you saw in the chrono test, it clearly works, everything's fine, and that's that. And let me think, and that's pretty much it for the build. There is something that I would suggest you guys to not do, which is not use the motor that I'm using. The reason why is because if you're building your DSG, it's very unlikely that you're using two springs. I use an M120 spring for indoors, and I use an M150 spring for indoors. It's very unlikely that you're using two springs. So in a perfect world, you should use a particular motor that matches your particular load. The M150 is a little bit strong, so this motor sometimes struggles. Sometimes. It still works, it's just not optimal. If you want to make your trigger response a lot better than what I have, I highly recommend you to build yourself a torqueer motor or buy a torqueer motor. I'm mostly using this because this motor is cheap. The SHS motor, this one only costs $30 US. So this is actually quite a cheap torque motor. I wouldn't exactly call this a high torque motor, but it has enough torque. Not a whole lot, but enough. Keep in mind also, if you want to use your DSG for full auto a lot, if you buy a high torque motor that's way too torquey, your full auto might be a little bit slow, right? But your trigger response will be fantastic. If you want a balance of full auto and single fire, you might want to go for something like an 18 TPA build or a 20 TPA. This is more like, I believe this is 16 TPA or 18 TPA. I can't exactly remember, but this is enough for my particular build. But in a perfect world, I would probably try to build and get something a little bit better. Sorry about that. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. I hope it's a little bit shorter than my Amoeba video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think. Please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. I also have a Facebook page and store, which there's sales going on right now, which you can check out in the link in the description box below. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace, guys. Happy shooting.